Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, leading publishers of books, directories, educational guides and magazines aimed at schools in the UK and beyond. Enjoy the podcast.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Teachers Talk Radio. I'm your host Uta. Hi. And tonight I'm going to be with three new teachers, Ben, Cecilia and Jean. And we're going to be talking about their motivation to become teachers now that everybody's actually leaving teaching, and also their aspiration for the future. So they're going to tell us what they've been doing so far, how they actually decided to become teachers, and what their plans are for the future, if they're planning to stay in teaching or if they actually got different plans and maybe they're going to leave teaching. So tune in, and you can also call in or send messages to take part in the conversation. I don't know, Cecilia, how was your day? How was your Monday? Was it a difficult day for you today? How is your Monday usually?
It was the usual, to be honest. I wouldn't. It probably was just the usual Monday. Not too difficult, not too easy.
Okay, Cecilia, I'm not sure if it's just me, but I cannot really hear you. I don't know if you will be able to speak up a little bit.
Can you? Is this better?
No, I think I'm having an issue.
Oh, sorry about that. I've got my earphones and I'm trying to speak as loud as I can.
All right. Okay.
So, yeah, I had a good day. Thank you.
So how is your Monday usually? Is it a busy day or?
It depends on the week. 1 week I only have 3 lessons.
Yeah.
And then an after-school elective, and then another week I've got 4 lessons, and then an after-school elective.
Yeah, so I hope you were able to rest this weekend to get ready for this week.
I was, yeah, thank you.
So we're just going to wait for the others to come in. But while we're waiting for them to call in, could you tell us about yourself? So where do you teach? What subject do you teach? Do you teach in primary school, in secondary school? And anything else you would like to share with us, really?
Yeah, so I'm currently teaching in the East Midlands. I teach secondary English. And I came into teaching through the Teach First program. So it's been, it's coming up to 2 years now. And yeah, it's been going well.
Yeah. So you're in your second year of Teach First.
Yes.
And you are teaching English in a secondary school.
Yes.
Are you finding it? I mean, I heard that Teach First is a bit intense. Is that the right word for it?
Yeah, I mean, with the Teach First program, you're definitely kind of thrown to the deep end, and you do have to really make sure you're able to cope with the learning curve that you go through. However, I think you never stop learning. It can be really easy to hit a plateau, but once you kind of realize that it's always learning, there's always something to learn, then you're kind of less hard on yourself. And so, yeah, it has its difficulties, has its positive moments as well.
I bet, I bet, I bet. I think Ben has just joined us actually. Hello, Ben, how are you?
Good evening, you sound very well, thank you. How are you?
Good, good, good. I was just trying to catch up with Cecilia about her day so far. How was your day?
Yeah, it was good, thank you. We've started mock SATs week in year six this week, so
Oh, joy.
they've done really well on the first
Oh, that's good.
set of papers they've done. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, can't complain. But no, it's been a good day, thank you.
Oh, fantastic. Glad to hear it. Sometimes Monday can be a bit difficult after a weekend. So
Hmm.
it's good to hear that you had a good start of the week. Hi, Jean. Jean has joined us as well. Hello, Jean. How are you?
Hi, hello. I'm fine. Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you. Fantastic. Yeah, that's really great. Very clear.
Excellent.
How was your day today, Jean? I'm not
Um,
going to ask about your weekend. I heard about all about your weekend.
yes, yeah. No, my first Monday back was fine. Yeah, actually everything went pretty much to plan. The lessons went okay. I think I can feel like the behavior is slipping away at the moment a little bit as we go into the summer term. So it's sometimes a bit frustrating. You could feel it with a lot of staff member. But yeah, it's also the final sprint for the year 11 revisions at the moment, so we're all quite busy on that. Yeah,
Yeah. So I mean, it's like it sounds like we're getting exam ready. Ben is doing
yeah,
his SATs. You're getting your year 11 ready. Fantastic. So I think Cecilia has already introduced herself. So Cecilia is an English teacher in a secondary school. Do you guys want to introduce yourself too? Do you want to start, John? You can introduce yourself.
yeah, for sure. So yeah, my name is Jean. I'm a French teacher in a all through school in Southeast London. I teach from year 4 to year 13. I teach French and Spanish actually. So I have quite a good range, and I do really enjoy teaching in this school. It is my first year. I'm an ECT, and just before that, I did a PGC, which I just completed at UCL. And before that, I did film studies for 6 years in the UK mostly. So yeah, that's me.
Okay, well, on behalf of everybody who's listening, nice to meet you. So we're going to talk about what you've done before teaching later on in the show. But okay, so fellow language teacher, but the difference between you and I is that you're actually teaching from year 4,
Mm.
so key stage 2 all the way to key stage 5. What about you, Ben? What's your subject? Um,
So I'm a primary school teacher. I'm in my second year of teaching, but I did start a bit earlier before qualifying as a learning mentor and unqualified teacher in a primary school. So I taught year 3 as an unqualified teacher in my first ECT year. I then taught year 5, and then I moved schools at Easter, and I now am working in a role where I teach year 6 in the mornings and do interventions in year 6, and then I provide PPA cover across the school, mainly in year 1 and year 4. I've also been a middle leader, led on different things, including personal development, humanities, assessment, different aspects of curriculum, and been a safeguarding lead, a DSL as well. And I'm also the founder of the EdConnect network, which is a network for early career teachers and trainee teachers, and also the Step Up network, which is for new and aspiring leaders in education. And prior to being a teacher, I worked in retail management for 4 years, which I know we're going to cover previous industries and stuff later in the program. But I'm just glad to be here. It's a great topic we're talking about.
So you've got your plate full, Ben. You've got sounds like you got plenty of things to keep you busy throughout the year. So yeah, I think you just said so. You just started, but at the same time, you're in a new school. Just recently, you just moved school.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and Jean and Cecilia, this is your first really school after your trainings.
Yes.
Okay. So,
Correct.
yeah, so I mean, you already mentioned it, so let's jump in. So, before teaching, I think Ben and Jean, you did something else. Um, Jean, do you want to tell us what you did before getting to teaching?
Yeah, for sure. I can actually start from my baccalaureate. So French is equivalent of A level. So I grew up in France, in Paris, and I studied film studies there and didn't really like it. I didn't like the French system, so I moved to the UK because an opportunity opened up to have accommodation in London, and I really enjoyed the British university system. So I ended up doing evening classes at Birkbeck in film and media. And my reason for moving to the UK was learning screenwriting techniques. But then it kind of expanded to just studying film theory and media in general. And then after completing the degree over 4 years at Birkbeck, I did a MPhil in film studies at Cambridge, which I really enjoyed. But it was also the time I realized that I didn't necessarily want to carry on doing academic work, and I wanted something a bit more hands-on. Um, Also, while I was doing my degree at Birkbeck, I worked as a fishmonger and cheesemonger. Uh,
Excuse me. Can you say that again? Sorry. What did you say?
I was a fishmonger and a cheesemonger
Okay.
in a
That's
shop while I
unusual. That's
was.
unusual.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. The reason was, of course, to fund my studies, but it was a good life experience, as it is always with part-time jobs, and it was also getting up to speed with English because I wanted to improve my fluency. But also, when you work in retail, yeah, in a shop like that, you observe a lot,
Yeah.
and you live a lot, and I quite enjoy that. But then eventually, I decided that when I did my masters, I decided I had to quit that job, and I had also to move on from academia. And teaching seemed like a good choice because overall, and maybe I think we'll talk a little bit about this later on as well. My impulse in going to teaching was not only a seek of, I think, of financial security. It was also the one to have a job that would give a really fulfilling life experience.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
because I'm really interested in writing, and first of all, it was screenwriting, but then I just realized it was just being a writer in general, writing plays, novels, whatever. But I just thought you can't really be a writer if you don't have experienced the real world in any shape or form. And being in schools is probably one of the most you know
Definitely.
exhilarating environment to observe human nature just in general.
Yes.
And it really paid off so far because you just it's like a microscopic society, isn't it? A school is, and but that's the overall aim, and it's pretty much really fulfilling that because I really do enjoy the human contact, the support we offer students as well. And I think, as we all do with teaching, is we kind of get into it because we have an interest, but then we realize it's also so much more. But you only realize that when you're actually into it, the all the richness of the profession.
Mm, 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 mm. No, I mean, I don't think I ever met somebody who was a fishmonger before being a teacher, but you never know. So let's see if Ben is going to say the same thing as you. But I think we all agree that, like you said, working in a school, you just meet so many different people. So, I mean, if you want to really, I don't know, learn or discover human nature, there's no better place, is there?
But yeah, definitely, no, it's quite incredible.
Yes. So Ben, what about you? What did you do before teaching, if
Um,
you did
so
anything?
so I worked in retail management purely because I was at school studying A levels. Sort of wasn't really set on what I wanted to do. I had explored different things. Had studied business studies since GCSE. Did really well at it. Thought I'd do something to do with that. But I was also a student leader in my secondary school and had been involved in student leadership and like pupil voice since I was in about year 9 and had lots of different opportunities because of it. So then I thought, oh, maybe the education route. But I ultimately didn't know what I wanted to do, and I was working part time in a local shop. And rather than going to university and potentially
Yeah, a lot
not
of people
get,
do that. Yeah.
yeah, like not going on the right path or not knowing what path to follow, whether you need a path or not, I decided to just not go to university initially with the view that I would go, but
Yeah.
sort of when, not,
Later
um,
on, yeah, when you
yeah.
would be ready.
And I was, so I worked full time, got promoted, become a supervisor and an assistant manager, and got lots of experience of like training people. And I was working with someone, and she probably doesn't know how much of an impact she sort of had on me, because she was training to be a teacher as well, doing a 3-year degree, worked there part time, and she sort of watched me and watched how I trained people and inducted new staff. And she said, you're so good at explaining things. Have you ever thought about like teaching? Because I think you'd be really good at it. Like you've got quite good, you build really good relationships with people, and yeah, you're great at explaining things and showing how and modelling things and all the things you'd want in a teacher. And I did some work experience in my old primary school, and I just loved it straight away. I loved the variety. I knew, like, because then when I sort of decided teaching, it was like, will it be primary? Will it be secondary? I really enjoyed business studies and had an A level in it. I enjoyed history, but I didn't do it in GCSE or A level. So I was like, oh, could I be a secondary teacher? And I think I would have probably got bored teaching the same subject. I really
Oh,
like teaching
really?
around the subject. Um,
Yeah.
so I went and worked towards that, and I still worked in retail for a longer period of time, for 4 years. Got lots of different management experience and leadership experience, which I've then been able to take into school.
Yeah.
I took on a lot of leadership responsibility, which I know we'll touch on, like future and experience we've got later. But it taught me a lot about people and stuff. So yeah, so that's me really.
No, I mean, you just said the same thing. I think it's so easy, I think, when you're not working in a school, to miss the fact that we are in the people's business, actually working in a
Hmm.
school. We have to juggle with adults, young people, the parents, everybody at the same time in one day. So I'm sure that all your experience before getting into teaching, have helped you. What
Hmm.
about you, Cecilia? What have you been up to before teaching?
So I actually came into teaching straight after university. Um,
Oh, okay. So a bit
I
different from Ben and Jean then.
Yeah, I did a major in English and a minor in Spanish at Leicester Uni, and I also did a year abroad in Canada, which
Oh,
I really enjoyed. And then the reason I came through Teach First actually is I got a message on LinkedIn. I wasn't planning on doing Teach First straight after uni. I was thinking of maybe doing some international teaching. I was going to look at becoming an English language assistant with the British
mm-hmm.
Council in Spain, because I wanted to have that opportunity to improve my Spanish.
Yes, yeah.
Um, and then so I got the message on LinkedIn, and the person was like, based on your experience, I think you should, consider applying for Teach First. And I applied for it because I just saw it as like another option. I wasn't expecting to get onto the program, to be honest.
Mm-mm-mm.
Um,
Oh, why not? Why did you? Why?
I didn't. I just wanted to keep my doors open, really. I just because I was
Okay.
already thinking about British Council, and
Mm-mm.
so I figured, well, by having this, I'll have a backup as well in case either
Nice.
like one doesn't go through. So yeah, and then I got into the program and decided to um do this instead, and then maybe later on in the, I don't know, at some point I could do some international teaching after I get some better experience in the UK, because I realised that um, a lot of schools outside the UK, they appreciate you having at least a couple of years of experience
Mm-mm.
in the UK, and
That's what I
um,
heard as well. Yeah.
so I thought it would probably benefit me anyway if I just stayed and did the stuff, the placement at Teach First.
Mm-mm.
And then so they placed me at school in the East Midlands, and it's been a couple of years now that I've been here, um, and it's been going well. Like I was saying, it was a huge learning curve in my first year, because I had some experience of working in the school because I I was an English mentor with Pathways when I was at university
Okay. Yeah.
before,
Yeah.
and then before I came to university, I also worked at Kumon. Um, and so I was always interested in education, but it was really interesting for me to kind of be on the other side as a
Mm-mm.
teacher and kind of think about my own skill and experience as well. Um,
Yeah.
and the thing with Teach First is they usually place you in schools that are socially and economically disadvantaged.
Yes, yeah.
And so it was a big shock to me, like seeing some things at the school. Um, and yeah, it was just a lot to learn in the first year. I'm still learning a lot
I think we are all
things.
learning, to be
Yeah,
honest with you. It maybe sounds strange to you, but I think we are still all, learning. I think as a
yeah,
teacher, you never
definitely.
stop.
Yeah.
No, so I mean, yeah, so I think we got quite a mixed here. So we've got Cecilia. I mean, you're all new teachers, but Cecilia just um, joined teaching straight after uni, and then we've got two, I mean, I would say more seasoned. We worked in retail before, and we worked as a fishmonger Jean before, but you're all here now and I am here as well, so very very nice to have you on the show. So what I would say, I mean, we talked about it already, but my question for you really, guys, is a lot of people are unhappy at the moment. A lot of people are really complaining. I mean, we've got a strike, I think, on Thursday coming up, um, and next week as well. So people, teachers anyway, are not happy at the moment. And I've been a teacher for a few years, so I mean, I'm here. I cannot really say anything, but I'm just a bit curious as to kind of why you, like new teachers, why you would join teaching now when.
I can go. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I was already aware of like the stereotype of teaching before I joined. You know, with like the workload and like having to deal with kids and things like that.
Mm,
But I mean, I've realized that it doesn't really matter what kind of job you get. You're always going to have difficulties with people. Ethan, no, we can't hear you. Um, and so yeah, so then when I joined, I realized that actually teaching is, of course, it's challenging as any job is, but it's actually very rewarding, and
mm,
it's great to see when kids make progress, when they improve on their writing skills, and when they're able to use more sophisticated vocabulary, and to know
mm.
that you played a part in that, and that's always really encouraging. Um, and so yeah, like I've always wanted to work in education, and I don't think it can be really easy to allow other people's perceptions of
Mm,
teaching to impact you. But I think
Mm,
ultimately teaching is what you make it. If you're going to go into
mm,
it thinking that it's always going to be terrible and you're always going to be overworked, then you're not going to help yourself. But if you're able to set some boundaries about when you work and how long you stay up for and things like that, you're able to have a better balance between your work and your life.
do you want to build on that, Ben, at all?
yeah, I very echo what Cecilia says, and I think that also, if you, the reason why I left retail was that I didn't get a sense of fulfillment. Ultimately, my role there was to make more money for a company. Ultimately, obviously, yes, I enjoyed like dealing with people, and that was where my sort of strengths lay. But I think the good thing about a school, particularly coming from my perspective of a primary school, I started working in a very small primary school compared to the school that I started in at Easter. It's much bigger. And that sense of community, that schools literally are the heart of their communities. I think COVID highlighted this for lots of us. And I think, yeah, being part of a community, not just shaping education, but shaping a community through the contribution you make to a school, whether you are, a teacher, a leader, a caretaker, whatever role you have, I think is something that's really rewarding, as Cecilia also said. What about you, Jean? What do you think?
Um, I it's funny because I had never really thought of the importance of teaching until I actually started my PGC because it was more of an academic decision earlier on, you know. I remember looking at the PGC courses and I looked they were funded, I looked they could be at UCL. So really the impulse first was just, oh, I will have a job and I will have an academic qualification and it looks interesting. And then when I started doing the placement, and then as you said, you start to understand the sense of community in schools and the importance you become, for the students, how important you are. You don't really realize it until you build these relationships. And then suddenly you realize, oh, okay, they really need us, and what we're doing as a job is really important. Um, and also, I don't know about you guys as well, but I felt like I also had some familial context that kind of actually drove me in that direction much earlier than I thought it would be. Because my parents, they were nurses in difficult environments, difficult hospitals, and I guess that really entertained a kind of tradition of doing jobs in the caring industry in a way. Because I really felt like I always say, when I have conversation with my mentor, we often make the point that we often feel more like a short carer than a teacher at times. But that, I think, highlights the importance of the job, and that regardless of the tides of the strikes and pay wages and all these issues going on at the moment, we are still, staying because we're holding on to that sense of purpose and that sense of rewards we get from the students and the relationship and their progress. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That purpose is really important.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides, and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out! Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
Thinking about you, well, I don't know if I was thinking about you specifically or if I was thinking about people who are actually working in retail at the moment, and their position, because of course they are not earning a living as much as teachers, for example, of and their
Hmm.
condition. I mean, apparently is that's what people are saying in the public domain. People are thinking, oh, teachers got it easy, and
Mm.
people in retail. So I don't know if Jean, you want to talk about this, or then you can feedback afterwards. But the fact that people in retail are actually maybe in a worse off position, but teachers are actually in the streets. I don't know,
Yeah.
Ben, if you want.
Oh, I
Oh,
think Jean's
yeah.
coming in.
Yeah, just right. Sorry. So just say that once again for me. Is it?
No, I was just thinking about, the fact that some people, not a lot of people, not everybody,
Mm.
but some people are a bit, they don't really understand why teachers, and they think teachers got it easy as well. So
Oh,
they're just thinking, oh, teachers got it easy. They just work, 9 to 3 o'clock. Why are they in the street complaining? People in retail, they work really horrible hours with, bad customers. They're never in the street complaining. So what's your take on that?
I think it's they're just very two different workloads.
Mm,
I really enjoy. I'm really. I like. I mean, I do enjoy. Well, I wouldn't say enjoy, but I find it interesting to compare my experience as as a retail and as a teacher.
mm,
Um, it was interesting the transition because, as I said earlier, when I was doing my training, I found teaching as a job terrifying and
yeah,
overwhelming
me
compared
too.
to working in retail. I really found it, and I was almost regretting my decision of going into teaching for a
Oh,
while.
okay.
Yeah, I was. It was really hard, but eventually, once you go away from that training position, which is probably, in my opinion, the hardest when you're learning the job and you're all
Mm,
in constant supervision, and you have that academic and practical pressure. And suddenly, once you are settling into a school and in your routines, it's a lot more comfortable once you have established yourself in your school and you have established a
yeah.
routine and a relationship with students. And I feel like suddenly it feels a lot more manageable that you have once you have that experience.
Mm,
I'm not sure if I'm going away from your point, but I'd say the thing with retail is, I mean, when I compare the pay is terrible in retail compared to teaching. That was my first realization. Um, And
No, I think the point you're making is right. The fact that it's not just monetary. We are really working with people. I think that's what you're trying to put across, isn't it?
yes, yes, and also that once when you start as a teacher, it is really hard to kind of get that balance, that
Mm-hmm.
work-life balance. Whereas
Yeah.
as in retail, it's more depending of the position, of course, because
Yeah.
I was not the manager of my fish and
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
cheese shop, and the person who actually was the manager did not find it easy to have that position of managing
Yeah.
everything. So of course it depends what kind of position you have. um, I also find that what makes teaching overwhelming for a while, once you're able to, tame it in a way,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
also can also become a source of, let's say, stimulation. Because the
Mm-mm-mm.
only problem with I would have had with retail is that you can get yourself stuck in a routine when
Yeah. It's a bit monotonous. Yeah.
it's a bit monotonous. However, I will say that I have heard that many wannabe writers do usually go for retail jobs because they are
Oh.
undemanding intellectually. And
Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm-mm.
then they go back at home and they write because at least they've had all that time to think about the
Yeah.
stories
Yeah.
when they do
Yeah.
very mechanical job. It's
Yeah.
it's a lot harder to do that as a teacher because the
Mm-mm-mm.
big issue is we have a tremendous mental workload. We constantly worry about our students' progress, our
Yeah.
students' well-being, and the staff. The amount of staff we are in contact with as in schools is just tremendous, and we
Mm-mm-mm.
don't often realize it, but we kind of care about each other. So you're juggling all of these different mental workloads you kind of worrying about. It does make it really hard, I think, as a starter to find time to write. Even yesterday, I was struggling to fall asleep, which was quite unusual for me. But I was just constantly thinking about school, and that's why
Yeah.
I couldn't fall asleep. And I realized this is it takes its toll. And then you wake up in the morning, you haven't had enough sleep, but it's not because you didn't go to bed a good time. It's because you couldn't have enough
You
sleep, you
can't
couldn't
switch
fall
off.
asleep, you couldn't
Yeah, you
switch
can't
off
switch off.
exactly.
You actually always thinking about. There's always something that comes up in your mind, and you're
Yeah.
just thinking, okay, what about that? What about this? Oh, did I remember that? Yeah. So it. I mean, I would like to hear about Ben because you mentioned earlier the fact that maybe as a manager the workload is a bit different. So what do you have to say about that, Ben?
Yeah, I suppose I would say that in general, in theory, in terms of retail, what you've got to remember is yes, you as soon as you clock out, you technically are off shift. Whereas I think in teaching, it's probably very different, and it's probably very similar in things like healthcare and so on. I'd say as a manager, yeah, I was probably still thinking about the
Okay.
store and
Yeah.
people, not as much as say what I do in teaching, because ultimately it was more so. I think in the last place I worked as a retail manager, I actually set up a brand new store with a brand new
Mm.
team.
Oh wow.
There, I was probably thinking a little bit more about work because it was brand new, because people were brand new. I was having to
Mm-mm.
trust people I'd not really worked with or who weren't
Before.
experienced.
Yeah.
Whereas when I worked at a major retailer before that, I went in as a deputy store manager into a store where actually all of the people on the middle management team, the department managers, were more experienced than me.
Oh,
So
okay.
I was quite lucky then that I could walk out of that store at, say,
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
3 o'clock in the afternoon and know that I could walk in at 7 o'clock the next morning and it would be in a brilliant state.
No, I
Yeah.
think this is a very good transition because that's my next question. Really, it's about trying to find out in your schools. Do you feel like your management in your school is actually doing anything to help you kind of manage your workload better, or trying to encourage you to, I don't know, if we're thinking about the future, do you think your school where you are at the moment is doing anything to encourage you to stay in teaching, so in terms of workload or future aspirations, for example? Cecilia, do you want to get started on that one?
Yeah. So I think um, at my school, they do try and offer some like financial incentive to get people to stay.
Yeah, I think a lot of schools do that.
Yeah, and yeah, they just want to show like appreciation for staff. I think also they listen to feedback
Mm-hmm.
quite well, staff feedback. So we get sent out a lot of surveys regarding like CPD or training, and then they try and change how things are delivered based on that. Um, so, for example, on Wednesdays we have like TED Talks,
Yeah.
and it was fed
Every
back
Wednesday.
every Wednesday. It used to
Okay.
be every Wednesday we had TED Talks, and each week is a different theme.
Mm-hmm.
So one week was send, another week was planning, another week was curriculum, another week was oracy and literacy, things like that. And different staff members would run those TED Talks, and then you would you reflect on it, and then it was fed back that instead of having TED Talks every week, they should kind of be spaced out so that there's more time to have reflection and actually try and implement what was learned. And so because of that, we have TED Talks a bit less, and we have learning area time a bit more, so that we can actually implement what we've been learning, and that's probably been a good thing. So it doesn't feel as rushed.
Yeah.
Um,
Because sometimes it's true that you've got weekly CPDs, and then you're just
yeah,
thinking, okay, I would like the time to actually think about it, digest it, and actually act on it as well. But if you got it every single week, it's a bit difficult. So it's good that they acted on feedback on that one.
yeah, exactly. Um, so yeah, I think they
Yeah.
do try and keep the good teachers.
Yeah, that's a good way. Yeah, definitely. What about you, Jean? What does your school do to kind of keep teachers happy?
Um, well, I'm currently in a school that is struggling a lot with staff retention. It's a fairly new school, as in the building is new, but the actual let's say federation that runs it has been running schools for a while, but it's it is they've only opened the secondary phase only a few years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and so a lot of the systems are still let's say finding their fits, especially regarding behavior, which means that a lot of extreme behavior tends to get away. A lot of kids tends to get away with it, or they don't seem to really care so much about the consequences that arrive after certain behavior. So, which means that the behavior has been a big issue in our school, which has
Mm-hmm.
made a lot of staff leave.
Yes,
Um,
yeah.
and on top of my head, I can't really think of how they have been trying to do staff retention.
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
So it's a bit of a disappointing response, and maybe if anyone from my school will recognize this, they will tell
I
me.
don't want
They
you to
will,
get in trouble,
yeah. But
Jean.
I mean, I do. But also, we're here to talk frankly. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
try and find reasons why. But on the other hand, I'm really happy working at that school, despite the behavior issues.
So what makes it a good place to work at then?
Ah, well, I think, and it's also a common trait in tough schools, is
Mm-hmm.
that my colleagues are amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're very warm. We really support each other. Um, and I really love that. There is a sense of belonging I have not experienced in other places of work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes me want to stay. It's literally the individuals, because we placed in a tricky situation, we probably support each other more
Yes.
than we would in a school that actually is more stable. And I'm
Everything
actually
is going
happy.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, and in a way, I'm happier with that rather than a school where, for example, the behavior would be better, but there would be more pressures, academic pressures placed on teachers for achievements, for
Mm-mm-mm.
example. Because overall, even if I'm thinking about my goals overall, why I've went to teaching, I went to teaching to essentially have that rough experience.
Yeah.
So it almost fits in perfectly with what I want to get out of teaching, which is observe, and help out, obviously, then
Mm-hmm.
afterwards, students in difficult situations, rather than being a private school where you literally look you have different priorities, really.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, I think I mean it's really interesting what you're saying because Of course, it's nice when the school is doing a lot to help you, to support you, and you feel like you've been listened to by management. But at the same time, well, the teachers are a big part in it as well. And I think what you're saying is that because of that supportive environment, that's the reason why you are feeling so happy where you are at the moment, isn't it?
Mm.
No,
Oh
that's
yeah,
that's
yeah.
really that's really good. What about you, Ben? What does your school do to kind of keep you guys happy?
Yeah, I think it's interesting for me because I've recently just moved school, and in my case, and I'm not sure if this affects secondaries as much, but in primary, the size of a school really affects, I think, workload and well-being. So I've came from a
Mm-hmm.
school where it was one class per year group. You can be a bit of an island. You do everything yourself. You don't have
Yeah.
anyone to bat ideas off. And I always knew in my head, I didn't really have a career plan, but I also
Mm-hmm.
loosely in my head knew I'd rather work in a smaller school and then move to a bigger school than the other way around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I've moved from a one form entry, so one class per year group, to a three class per year group school. And
Right.
I've noticed pretty much a difference instantly in terms of workload and well-being. One, from the size of the school, but
Mm-mm.
also the culture of the school. Workload and well-being is something I've always, whenever I've looked at jobs and teaching jobs, it's always something I've really tried to drill in. And I think you can drill so much, but you don't really see it until you're truly there. So it can be quite worrying that you
Mm-mm.
see what they're saying, but is it actually true? Not so, like the head teacher herself said to us all in staff meeting last week when we were talking about the marking policy. A subject leader had done some work scrutiny, and she said, like, some of you have been a bit hard on yourself. You've marked too thoroughly, like,
Wow.
and the head teacher turned around and said, well, you know that, and I didn't know this, but everyone else knew because they've been there. But she said, you know that one of the reasons why I don't teach, one of the reasons why I got out of the classroom was because marking was something that took over my life in the schools I worked in. Which is why she says that's why I've worked so hard with you to make a marking policy that works for you, which does. Like, I've not, in the 6 days I've been there, so not
Yeah.
very long. I've not taken any marking home at all. I've managed to get it all done within
Oh
the
my
core
goodness.
day, and I think that says a lot
Yeah.
about, and especially as I'm working in year six, and year six write a lot, and they're known to have like quite a more complicated things to do compared to say children in year one.
Yeah.
But I think it does come down to that culture of coming from the top. And I mean, it's even so. I know I'm waffling on a bit here, but even little things like I remember when I got the staffing structure list for my school, and
Yeah.
it said the name of the member of the staff, their role, so their job title, like deputy head teacher or whatever, and their responsibilities. And the head teacher's first responsibility that was listed on her list was staff well-being.
Oh
And I
my
think it's like
goodness.
little things like that that
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
never seen that before. Whereas it's usually things like the top one is usually like lead DSL or curriculum or teaching and learning, and it was the first time I'd seen that. And I thought even just that little thing, which other people probably wouldn't notice, for me, I try and look at these well-being things that it's really important to me, that, and it shows that it's important to them as well. So that culture is so important.
No, I think from what I mean, what I've seen, what you just said in your schools, and what I'm seeing in my school as well, um, well-being is really taking a bigger really place in schools, which is really good. I think when you think about it, it's about time. Well-being, the well-being of the teachers as well as the students is being looked into, because well, we are kind of, the force behind um, making sure the students fulfill their potential. So no, that's really good. So I think my next question really is, you are all being listened to in your school. You've got a very good support system in schools. So what I would like to ask really is, are you going to stay? Because honestly, the school you are describing, looks lovely. So what are your plans for the future? Are we staying in teaching? What are you planning to do?
I would say for me that I do intend on being in teaching for a while. Well, I say education for a while. I think my interests sort of lie more in school leadership and probably development of teachers and teacher development. I would probably say longer term, if I was still in education and retiring age, and that's a very, very long way away, I probably wouldn't say that I'd be retiring in a classroom. I may retire in a school, I may not, but I definitely want to be in education for a long time. Yes, it's really hard. I think it is about, for me, I did at one point think, can teaching be manageable? Could you have a family when you was teaching? Could I do this for another 20, 30 years?
Yeah.
But I think if you find the right place, the right school, the right organisation, the right line manager, the right role for you, because there'll be some people in there who come into teaching but then fall into or want to get into, say, becoming a Senko, and they may become non-class, may be a fantastic teacher, but then actually spend all their time being a Senko, which is brilliant. Or you might go for the pastoral route or the teacher development route or policy, as Cecilia was talking about earlier. But I think as long as you can find the right balance, and I think that does take time. Even as a second year, I do things so much differently this year compared to my first year, and I think it can be done to a certain extent. Yes, you might never have your to-do list done, but if you can get the majority of it done and can switch off, I think it can happen. But yeah, you need to be in the right place, the right fit for you, and around people that can support you as well.
Okay, all right. So, Cecilia, Ben was mentioning you. So, what about you? I mean, do you see yourself in the classroom or?
Um, no, I don't think so. Um, I'm
Oh, okay.
I'm hoping um to get into like policy, and I definitely see myself still working with schools. I don't think I don't see myself completely moving away from that, but I'd really like to set up a tutoring um business and be able to offer like educational services outside of the classroom, um, and yeah, because I think so often with teaching in the classroom, it's so easy to have kids slip through the cracks, and you've
Mm-hmm.
got 30 kids and so many of them
Oh,
have
okay, yeah.
just so different,
Mm-mm.
and it's you can't, as you obviously you scaffold and you make ways for
Yeah.
kids who struggle, but you really can't give like a blanket treatment.
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
Um, and so yeah, I think I'm quite interested in tutoring and like having being able to go into more detail with topics and like writing skills and things like that. I think would be really helpful, and then looking into policy and I don't know, doing consultancy even, and helping other schools and doing things that way.
No, sounds interesting, and I think sounds interesting, but also very ambitious. So I think, I mean, we're going to go to Jean in a bit as well, but maybe you will be able to talk to us about the steps you've taken into going in that direction afterwards, Cecilia, because it's just about, okay, you're not planning to stay in teaching in the classroom in the traditional sense of it, but kind of touching into consultancy. So maybe afterwards you can tell us about the steps you've taken to actually achieve that ambition. What about you, Jean? Will you be there in 3 years, 5 years?
As far as I'm concerned, 3 years, 5 years, yeah, I would still see myself in a classroom. Uh, but not only because I like settling into an environment, you become more familiar, you know the resources, you know how things work, and then that then allows more time for other things you want to develop in your teaching career. Now, I'm very interested in, for example, running a MFL filmmaking club,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I'm not interested at all in taking more positions in school. It's not something I'm really attracted to. In fact, it's something I quite
Yeah, yeah, I
I
understand
the
what
thing
you
is,
mean.
yeah, the thing is, I'm really allergic to admin and teacher admin. It's really not something I enjoy. I enjoy doing the basic work as a teacher.
And the creative side.
Yeah, but exactly what I personally really want to develop is creativity within extracurricular activities, because then that's the sort of things that I'm really passionate about, is really making film with students. Because once I've done it once and saw the way, how transformative it was for the students and how much they enjoyed it, and how it helped their learning and their relationship with the language. I really want to carry on building on that. And perhaps what I would possibly be interested in doing is teaching media
Yeah.
as well. So it would be more teaching, but in the different the subjects I've actually spent more time studying than language in general. And then perhaps, with writing and screenwriting, it's very uncertain what will happen regarding that. Even though I do carry on writing with, especially with a friend of mine, we do write stories together and screenplays. So I have that writing buddy with who I carry on, doing these projects, but they're more or less passion projects. They're not something I'm trying to monetize or anything like that. So
Yeah, I understand.
it's completely unclear, and I'm really fine with it. I think the worst thing you can do, especially when it comes to creativity, is to put a financial pressure on it. Even
Yes.
though, like, I do understand people who want to make that their career will probably look at it that way, and I understand that. But from my position, because I have teaching going along, and I'm fine with it as at the moment. I'm happy for it to just be, well, not just a hobby. It's of course a vocation, but I don't mind it taking a back seat, and make my basic teaching and the creativity I can put into teaching and filmmaking in schools being my main focus, and that can take different shapes or form.
So have you already done a project like this or not yet? I mean, are you like Cecilia, is just still thinking, is still a conception, or have you already started?
My filmmaking club, has it started yet? Is that your
Yes,
question?
yeah.
Yeah, not yet. I've talked to my line manager, my head of department, who really wants me to get started with it. And I do want to do it. The only thing is, because this year has been quite of a rush, mostly because I'm building my resources for the first time, and that's what has been most of my time being consumed by.
Yeah.
I have found it. I've not really started it yet, even though there's a lot of, um, let's say, a lot of push for me to start doing it soon. The only problem is they don't really have any equipment.
Okay, so that's one thing you will need then.
Yes, but what they do have iPads or smartphones, so there's lots of ways around it, and which are actually even nicer because they're less complicated to use.
Yeah.
Easier to edit, and kids anyway watch most of their contents on their phones, filmed by phones anyway. It's not as if we can be really picky about things like that when you have a filmmaking background, but actually it doesn't really matter as long as you have a good story and a good editing. Kids really like filmmaking in general. So I don't think that's the main thing. I think the main thing is just organizing the time, and finding the time when I'm still doing my first ECT year and still bringing up my resources and organizing my time.
No, I mean, it's true. I think what you're saying is true. Making sure you are excelling where you are, and then eventually develop and really grow into that ambition of yours. So, Cecilia, is that okay if I go back to you and ask you, just like Jean, I just ask which steps you have taken so far in order to kind of fulfill that consultancy ambition?
So I guess first thing is I've started tutoring a student at the moment, and so hopefully that it will kind of be like a snowball effect, and eventually I'll be able to tutor more students. And then I'm hoping also to do a master's from September this year, and with that, be able to look a bit more into research, be able to set up a blog talking about research, um, and hopefully like find connections that way, and things like that. and then with yes, just hopefully be able to build a what's the word, a visible enough profile to be able to work with schools at consultancy level.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I really, I mean, of course, Ben, I am with you, Ben. We are in the same team. We are the one that are going to, stay in teaching. Well, I hope you are anyway, in whichever capacity. So, but I think I admire Cecilia and Jean as well for being able to kind of see what outside of teaching holds for them. What I would like to ask Ben and Cecilia is there anything your school or colleagues or anybody could say or do that would make you change your mind and think, oh, you know what, no, I'm staying for a few more years in the classroom? You can be honest, of course, but I was just thinking, um, is there anything a colleague, a student, a head teacher, anybody can tell you, and you'll be like, oh, actually, yeah, maybe I'm going to stay here.
Um, I I can't say I know, to be honest. I guess I'd only be able to make that decision if I'm given like when I'm presented with a choice
Yeah.
and there's an opportunity that arises, and I'd have to think about like the pros and the cons. Um, so yeah, I'm not
You
really
would have
sure.
to rationalize your decision before
Yeah,
actually, yeah.
yeah, exactly.
No, no, fair enough. What about you, Jean? Is there anything that can sway you into staying?
Um, it's tricky to say. Do you mean staying in teaching?
Yeah, instead of, developing the film side of it.
Um, well, I'd say if I develop the film side in school and that satisfies me, yes, definitely, because my best memories of filmmaking haven't been really going into the professional world. It's always been the community side of it.
It's true.
Who cares whether you're making money or if you're being famous about it? What matters is how it impacts people around
The
you, and there's
community.
yeah, it's the community. Because even that, if I used to do a lot of filmmaking for my scout group, uh, and I remember that being very satisfying, just because I would make films about what was going on, and then I would show them, and people were really enjoying them, and it was just such a fulfilling experience. And before that, I remember also making films at school when I was in sixth form,
Yeah.
and sharing it in my art classes, and it was tremendously satisfying. And I think I would definitely be happy staying in teaching for the pretty much for the rest of my career if I have this satisfying filmmaking side of it where you develop it with students. But then you never know when this how does this can take you in other places as well, you know. But yeah, I guess that side of it could let me encourage me to stay, but then you don't know whether this will create opportunities for you to you know to kind of explore that in more depth in other places, if that makes
No,
sense.
no, definitely. So I think we are nearly reaching the end of the show. So I just want to say thank you very much to all three of you, and a massive thank you as well for holding the fort while I was gone. I mean, you've been brilliant, guys. I don't know if I would have been able to do that. So thank you so much for holding the fort while we had all these technical issues. And what I don't know if we are here representative of the rest of the teaching community, but we've got three ECTs, three new teachers here, and one is thinking about staying and looking into leadership, and two out of three are already thinking about leaving teaching. So I don't know really what that means in terms of the profession as a whole, because I think you've been, even though you want to leave, you've been very complimentary about the job. So there is something going on here, And I think it's really about, I don't know if it's schools, a teacher, or the Department of Education. We need to think about how to kind of make the profession attractive, and think about strategies.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.